beautiful Guyana, with wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful
Guyana will become the next Dubai, and we, the citizens of Guyana, are super excited to benefit from our homeland the same way the citizens of Dubai benefit from theirs.
This is what life is like for citizens from the
Guyana will become the next Dubai.
Guyana, with wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful Guyana.
A very good evening to our audience of Globespan 24x7 as we come to you here from New York and, of course, our beautiful land of Guyana, where tonight we are so honored and privileged to have two of outstanding young ladies, the future of our country. The last time we met about 2 weeks ago, we had two amazing young men, and they were incredible. We got so much positive response from the audience about these two gentlemen, and I was kind of taken back. Where are the young women? So tonight is the opportunity to showcase our young women of Guyana. We're so proud to have these two young ladies. We want to thank Nohar Singh for making this platform available, and of course, Devin Bissou. Well, today we have Ryan Gobin, our technical specialist. To your audience, we want to thank you for joining us, and to all our Muslim brothers and sisters. I know this is the last week of Ramadan, and when we meet again next week, Eid will have gone. So we want to wish all of our Muslim brothers and sisters in Guyana around the world Eid Mubarak greetings. So tonight with us is no stranger to the Guyanese public. For some of us, we don't know these two young ladies, but we have Miss Corissa McClure, University of Guyana student, and so also is Miss Ellen Gopaul. And we want to welcome both of you ladies. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Okay, and then with my co-host, Dr. Rose. Dr. Rose, welcome.
Thank you, Charles, and welcome to the program, ladies.
Okay, today, ladies, was nomination day in Guyana, as you know, for local government election. And before we get into that, as Dr. Rose, I'm preempting what Dr. Rose will want to ask you. So I want you guys to tell the nation who you are, where you're from, what are you doing, a little history of yourself. So who want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Okay.
My name is Ellen Gopaul. I am originally from the west coast of Demerara, the west side, the best side. And I am a pre-law student at the University of Guyana. For my pre-law, I am doing a diploma in public management. And I am in my final year of study, and then I finally get to live my dreams and start studying law. So by September, I should be in law finally. I'm really excited. I am a member of the Youth Action Network of the U.S. Embassy. I am the Canadian High Commissioner for the Day Contest winner of 2022. And I'm also the event coordinator for the Caribbean Regional Youth Council. The Caribbean Regional Youth Council is a confederation of national youth councils across the entire Caribbean region. And it is the umbrella body for those governing national youth councils and also all youth organizations within those countries.
Wonderful. What about your family background?
My father is a retired teacher. He's a bit of a, I don't know if I should say a mechanic. He loves math and physics, and so he loves building, fixing things. He's very innovative. And my mother is a very hardworking woman. My parents are divorced, firstly, but my mom is extremely hardworking. And I'm very fortunate to be blessed with the parents that I have.
Any siblings?
I have a brother and a sister. My brother's name is Joshua. My sister's name is Artie. Artie's an accountant. And Joshua is, I'd say, very philosophical. Joshua's philosophical.
Okay.
Hello, RT.
And Joshua. Miss McClure?
Yeah, so thank you. First of all, let me start by saying thank you so much for having me on this program. It's an honor, and I'm so excited to see where this discussion is going to lead tonight. So a bit about myself is that I am currently on the council for the U.S. Embassy's Youth Action Network. I'm their current events coordinator. Outside of that, like Ellen, I also was a winner of the Canadian High Commission's High Commissioner for a Day contest. That was in 2021, so just before Ellen. And then in addition to that, I'm also a young influencer attached to the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security.
And what about your parents?
Yeah, so my parents, they're both in public relations / communications. So my mom, she works at Maritime Administration Department. She does public communications there. And then my dad works at the Ministry of Tourism. He's the PR person there as well.
And siblings?
Yeah, so I have two sisters. I'm the middle child. My eldest sister, she is a clinical / counseling psychologist. And then my younger sister, she's still in secondary school. She goes to Queen's College.
You know, young ladies, you guys are so eloquent. Even at my age, you are triple your age. I can't speak as eloquent as the two of you are speaking tonight. And we really look forward to a really lively discussion. Thank you so much.
Yes, definitely.
So as I mentioned, today is nomination day in Guyana, and we had some politics is very strange. There's a strange bedfellows. We were kind of shocked and surprised to see Miss Green. She's now on the list of the PPP, being a former mayor of Georgetown. That's, I guess, one of the prominent ones. I know Shell Mohammed is also on the PPP list on the East Bank, I believe, some with Eccles. In that council. You want to talk about that before we get into the discussion? Ms. McClure, you can go first this time.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very interesting, definitely, to see. I mean, and let me preface this by saying, because a lot of persons in Guyana would have previously voted how their parents voted, or they would have affiliated themselves to their grandparents' political party, so to speak. It is very interesting to see persons now taking those reins and saying, hey, okay, let me see which manifesto I like, or let me see which party has the most promising things outlined in their manifesto, which party seems to be in line with Guyana's development, and whichever they believe is in line with their values and what they want to see, which direction they want to see the country go in, they're unapologetically going behind that party, regardless of what persons might think or what persons might say. And to me, I think that's extremely courageous, and it definitely paves the way for us as young persons to say, hey, we don't have to fit the status quo or fit the norm or support a party based on how we look or what our parents chose. We could now look and make a decision for ourselves and align ourselves accordingly.
Are you saying that because you're in a program, or is that what your young people like you are thinking? I mean, it's related. The two young men were saying the same thing, but I'm just deep down in your heart. I spoke to a lot of Guyanese, both of African and Indian origin. And I do ask them, I said, the Guyanese of African origin, why didn't you join the PPP? And I asked the Indian Guyanese, why don't you join the PNC? And of course, they have different answers to give, which I think sometimes they're bluffing the answers in my personal view. Because as you rightly said, Ms. McClure, we do vote the way our parents voted. And we are hoping that will change. Before Ms. Gopaul come on, are you seeing that happening? And is there any surprise to this nomination day? Maybe you had some chance to look at the list and those who are candidate on the list. What are young people? Are there a lot of young people in it? What is going on?
So to answer your first question, I saw one of the news agencies posted that a popular African American guy has aligned himself with a particular party in government, and the news agency, I don't know if they were trying to push an agenda. But I mean, I think that's evident that persons are not looking at race, or they're not looking at what their parents would have done. Youth are looking at which party is dedicated to moving Guyana forward. And based on that, they are aligning themselves accordingly. So if they believe that party A is doing enough, or they agree with what party A has in mind for Guyana's future and Guyana's young people's future, they're going with party A, and they're not going to say, okay, my parents were so loyal to party B, and so I'm going to align myself with party B. And I'm so happy that as young persons, we are now breaking that kind of stereotype, and we're moving in a more progressive direction, and we have an open mind, so to speak, about politics on a whole. I don't know if
Ms.
anyone.
Ms. Gopaul?
I think we're seeing a really more transparent and democratic process at elections. And not only are voters making more informed decisions, but so are politicians. And which I feel at the end of the day, whichever party or the manifesto you feel more aligned with as an individual, whichever values you align yourself with more, then you should be free and able to switch between those parties. Of course, the concern of party loyalty comes in, and whether supporters may lose confidence in a political candidate for switching between parties. But at the end of the day, those politicians really have their conscience to live with and make their informed decisions. And as voters, also, it is our responsibility for us to be informed.
Are any of your candidates on any list for this election, this local government election?
No, I'm not a candidate.
You're
No.
not. I asked your fellow young people the last time, and I want to ask you first, Miss Gopaul. What is kwekwe?
It's an African dance at a wedding, I believe, or something of that nature. I did this in primary school. I did it in secondary school too, but it's been such a long time.
No, don't try that. Don't try that.
I've never been to one, but I would love to.
Miss McClure, what is Diwali?
Diwali is the festival of light.
What caused Diwali to be a celebration?
I believe that the Hindus celebrated to mark the triumph of good over evil and light over darkness.
Very good answer.
Excellent. All right, guys, tell me something, McClure. Tell me two good things that you would support the PNC for, or two good things that you would support the PEP for.
That's a good question. I think one major.
Okay, tell me one good thing then, not two.
Okay, I think the most major thing that I support the PNC for, that I like that they had outlined and pushed, is the implementation of school buses. I mean, when I just joined St. Joseph High School in 2017, there were some students that lived in Linden, and they had a free bus, a government organized bus that would bring them from Linden to Georgetown every day. And this was for students that would have attained scores to go to the top 5 schools. And so instead of pushing them away and saying, okay, you're in Linden, so you can't go to that school, that government would have organized a bus to carry them down every day and carry them back to Linden, every day, free of charge. And I really admire that. As it relates to the PPP, I mean, I really appreciate the opportunities that they're pushing for youth. Like, for example, the Young Influencers program is one. They are so intentional about youth involvement and about ensuring that everyone has an equal chance, that they continue to create avenues for not only youth, but women. And I'm kind of biased towards the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. So the Young Influencers program, they gathered these youth from across Guyana, the length and breadth, all 10 regions, and they brought us together and they said, hey, you guys are so interested in community involvement. We want to allow you to do more. We're going to train you in domestic violence. We're going to train you in anti-bullying. And then aside from that, they also have their WIN program, which they just had the third We Live Expo just yesterday. And that saw over 200 women businesses having free booths to come and exhibit and sell. And it encouraged the public to come and support these women in business. So I really like the intentionality about the One Guyana concept, or about including young persons, women, and all minority groups into, giving them an equal chance and an equal opportunity.
Ms. Gopaul, one reason why you support the PNC and one reason you support the PEP.
The PSC?
PNC and the PPP.
Okay, so that's a good question. Like Corissa mentioned, I think they've both had a bit of a different policies. We've seen with the PPPC, they're very engaged since they came into office with the concept of One Guyana. They've wanted to unite the country and eliminate racial discrimination and barriers that may segregate persons based on ethnicity primarily. And we have seen them doing a pretty good job, a pretty decent job at accomplishing that so far. And I think they must be applauded for that effort. And for the opposition, I think while they were in power, they were more so concerned, especially with marginalized groups, since the former First Lady was of Indigenous descent. And so I loved the way Indigenous people were being incorporated also into policies. And I think that's something that is really important for both sides.
Before Dr. Rose come on, I want to ask you both, Ms. McClure, you have an Indian boyfriend?
No, I haven't.
Ms. Gopaul, you have a black boyfriend?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Dr. Rose?
Wow. Ladies, good evening once again. Ms. Gopaul, you said you were or you are with the Caribbean Federation Youth Council. Explain that to what it means.
The Caribbean Regional Youth Council was established as a result of 3 Caribbean Youth Leaders Summit held in 2011, 2012, and 2013. So at those 3 Caribbean Youth Leaders Summit, Caribbean youth leaders all across the Caribbean region decided that there was a need for a unifying body and a democratic body to ensure that youth agenda is carried out within the region. And that is how really CRIC came about. CRIC has various committees that focus on different aspects related to youth work. For me, I'm specifically on the membership and engagement committee. Our aim is to ensure that the member national youth councils and member organizations of CRIC, they just don't feel as though CRIC exists, but they feel connected and as one with us. And so we have a list of calendar activities planned this year to engage all national youth councils and all youth organizations within the region. Our most upcoming one right now is actually the CRIC's Year of the Youth debate for this Saturday and Sunday, which proves to be exciting. We're giving youth an opportunity to amplify their voices at a regional level. And I think that it's extremely important that we provide this platform for youth, especially since this year has been coined as the Year of the Youth by the Commonwealth.
Good, very good. Ms. McClure, I think both of you have contested the Canadian High Commissioner contest. What that is all about. Explain to the viewers what that's all about. And how other people can take part in such a contest.
Sure. So the contest, it's every year on International Day of the Girl. Well, the proceedings happen on International Day of the Girl. So they accept entries just a few days before. And so what they would usually do is ask young persons about a social, or young women, young girls, about a social issue and how we can contribute, or how we can change, or what we think about it. And then they select the best entry from those. I think it'll be video entries. And then on International Day of the Girl, they give you the opportunity to, I think they actually tailor it based on what your career is. So on my day, because I'm into diplomacy, I'm studying international relations, what they did is they allowed me to have this roundtable discussion with a lot of women, a lot of amazing women from the diplomatic corps. So there was the British High Commissioner, there was the US Ambassador, there was the Secretary General of CARICOM. And so I was able to have a discussion with those women, and they were able to share with me and impart some knowledge. And then after the competition is done, the High Commission, they would still incorporate you into, whatever activities they have that they think would suit you. So following that, they also had me do a video on domestic violence, the 16 days of activism. That was in 2021. And then most recently, Ellen and I, they allowed us for International Women's Day to sit on a panel with some other amazing young women. And we led the discussion on digital literacy, digital innovation and technology for all, which was this year's International Women's Day theme. So it's a really good experience. And I think all the young women watching this program should look out for that for this October International Day of the Girl.
So it's just for women?
It's just for girls, yes.
Okay.
Women and girls. The age limit, I think, is 21, Corissa, yes?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
21.
Okay, that's strange. Now, Ms. Gopaul, both of you are also counsel of the U.S. Embassy Network. What is that all about? Tell our viewers.
The Youth Action Network is the youth arm of the U.S. Embassy, and it gives youth in Guyana the opportunity to liaise with the embassy and let them know what are some of the challenges and issues youth are facing, and to develop programs and events geared towards these youth. So it's really just an opportunity for Guyanese youth to volunteer, give back to their community, and the U.S. Embassy provides that space for them.
Okay, good. Now, as both of you should know, youths are 66% of Guyana's population. Guyana is one of the youngest nations I think in the Western Hemisphere, but I stand corrected with that. But I know it's in Latin America and the Caribbean. It's one of the youngest nations, youthful nations. 66% are youths between ages up to 40 years old. Now, President Ali One Guyana Initiative. Do you think it's working? And do you think youths of all persons should align with it? Ms. McClure?
Yeah, so I extremely love this initiative that the president is championing, because it ensures that we as a country are intentional and deliberate about fostering social cohesion across racial lines. And I think that it's very timely, because it is something that we have struggled with as Guyanese, sorry, for a really, really long time. And so the One Guyana initiative, I support anything that supports development and supports betterment of Guyanese. And so I'm really happy, and I'm definitely full 100% in support of anything that allows Guyanese to come closer together and to appreciate the different cultures that we have within us, while still be maintaining respect for all across races and across cultures.
What about you, Ms. Gopaul?
I couldn't agree with Corissa anymore. I think what we all want is unity at the end of the day, regardless of political affiliation. And, a government that is in power is a government for all of the people, not just who they would have voted for. And I think them trying to bridge that gap and being the government for all of the people, like I said, it should be applauded. Even apart from connecting between racial and other social segregations, they're also catering programs towards youth. Like, they have a President's Youth Advisory Council where they also take into consideration the opinions of youth on national matters. They also have had the Youths in Natural Resources, where they have given youths of all ethnic backgrounds and social statuses the opportunity to participate within, I think, the Ministry of Natural Resources. And I see they've went to some amazing places. I have some friends who are within that program, and yeah, I think they've been doing a pretty good job.
Good, very good. Now, my next question is for both of you. The highest non-voters in Guyana are youths. Why do you think youths don't vote?
Okay.
Yeah,
I like that question, and I always think that this is a very interesting question. And I think that young persons for a very long time have become frustrated with the lack of inclusion, so to speak, of us in the decision-making circle. So we have all of these policies, or we have had for a very long time, all of these policies that impact greatly the lives of young persons. But then when we look at the persons that are making these decisions, it's nobody that's younger, it's nobody that could understand genuinely what young persons need, and what is going to move us forward as youth. And so because of that, I think a lot of young persons have or had become frustrated with these policymakers, so to speak. And because they're saying, or we're saying that, let us have a space, let us have a seat at the table. We have ideas, we're energetic, we have some things to say. So can you give us that space to say it? But I see that now young persons, and I think that that's going to change for this upcoming elections. I see that young persons are so excited and so enthusiastic about politics and about ensuring that they have a say in who gets the power who is gonna control, our lives as Guyanese, especially with this new revenue. So young persons, they want to see change. They want to ensure that they have their voices heard, and so that's why I genuinely believe that young persons are now going to gather up in their numbers and go out and vote and ensure that they have a say in what's happening in Guyana.
Ms. Gopaul, if you to give the government one advice as to how youth should get involved in the decision-making process, what would you tell the government?
I know in some Caribbean countries and in some other countries of the world, they have a bit of a requirement for youth participation within the political processes. Like, let's say, for example, there should be a certain number of youths who are admitted to serve in parliament or have seats in parliament. So perhaps that is something that they could also try implementing. I'm not quite sure what would be the feasibility and sustainability of that in the context here of Guyana, but I think it is something worth exploring because, like Corissa mentioned, if one of the reasons why youths have not been as active in the democratic process of participating in voting, and it could be several things. I wouldn't want to rule it out to one factor and say that they don't trust politicians or politicians are not doing enough for them. Sometimes it could simply be a lack of understanding of the political process and how important their voices are. So we also see election campaigns being conducted by non-governmental organizations, enlightening youth about their democratic right and how important it is. And I think that's an important step, but it's also important to have youths directly involved within the process so they are not frustrated, as Chris would have mentioned. You don't want to frustrate the youths, of course.
Given the fact that in Jamaica, almost 98% of Jamaicans are blacks, Barbados about the same thing, Trinidad is not. But in Guyana, we call ourselves Indo-Guyanese, Afro-Guyanese, or natives or Amerindians or whatever you want to call those people. In Jamaica, they always say, I'm a Jamaican. Barbados, I'm a Barbadian. Bahamas, I'm a Bahamian, and so forth. In Trinidad, which has got Indians and blacks, they always say, I am a Trini, you live there. I'm a Trini. Why in Guyana we give ourselves the race title, Indo or Afro-Guyanese? Why? Ms. Gopaul, why do you think that is happening?
Several reasons. Again, I wouldn't rule it out to one factor. I think Guyanese are like growing up and being taught in primary school is that Guyana has multiple races and multiple persons, and we are a diverse society. And so we've always liked to show our diversity by saying, oh, well, I'm Indo-Guyanese or I'm Afro-Guyanese or I'm an Amerindian Guyanese, because we think that that represents our diversity and showcases what a wealth of cultures we have. So I think that could also be a possible reason. But in terms of whether we may be trying to segregate and where we just come together and say, okay, I'm just Guyanese instead of Indo-Guyanese, Afro-Guyanese, well, that's a whole other discussion.
True. Ms. McClure?
I definitely agree with Ellen in that we're showcasing how diverse Guyanese are, but I have never been in an international circle or a global sphere and heard somebody say, oh, I'm Afro-Guyanese. I always hear people saying, I'm Guyanese, I'm proud to be representing Guyana. And I'm not sure if that's just a youth thing, because most of my circles, I'm engaging with youth. And maybe that's what we're talking about, that young persons are now championing that change. But I'm hearing persons say, I'm a Guyanese, I'm 100% Guyanese, and the Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, I think that is just a term that we use internally or in these within Guyana's borders.
Charles, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks. You have some great audience online, and Mr. Takur Dayal is waving for you, Ms. McClure, and to you too, Ms. Gopaul. And maybe the question I asked you about, answering that many of our young people, and not only young people, but generally Guyanese per se, and I'm glad you mentioned that when we speak of ourselves, we are Guyanese. And Ms. Gopaul, I think your answer was really great. Maybe saying Indo and Afro can also be a positive thing, identifying our different cultures. And The sad news, however, is that we don't know each other's.
It was.
Sorry?
I used to think it. As a youth, I used to think it was. Okay, if someone were to ask me, oh, what type of Guyanese are you, which rarely they even ask, and I'd say, oh, well, like I'm Indo-Guyanese, or are you mixed, or what is your ethnicity? I've never thought of it as segregating myself from actually being a Guyanese. I just thought we were showcasing our diversity. Like Guyana has so many nationalities.
And you know what? I am 3 times your age, and I never thought of that. In that way you're looking at it. And that was really incredible. I like that. At that time, I never look at it as being a positive thing. I thought it was always negative, but now you've really explained it in a different light. And I like that explanation. And as Ms. McClure said, when we go out internationally, we don't say, oh, I'm Indo-Guyanese, I'm Guyanese, or I'm not Afro-Guyanese, I'm Guyanese. And that is true. One young lady, Miss Lawton, says, and she's right, Ms. Gopaul, that the former First Lady was actually of Chinese origin, but I think when Prime Minister Hines was president, his wife has the Amerindian heritage, and I think, but whether it's the former First Lady or one of our former First Lady, they were of Amerindian descent, and I think we're all proud of that. Talking about education, and you, Ms. McClure, say you went to St. Joseph. Ms. Gopaul, where do you go to? Which high school you went to?
I attended Stewartville Secondary, which is also on the West Coast.
Yeah, I know. I'm from the West Demerara, so I know Stewartville very well. And Miss McClure is in my street actually right now, living in my street. Yeah. But when both of you are going the academic route, which is phenomenal, but as we know, in our class, in any class that we go into, there are some students who propensity is not to go the academic route, which is in Guyana right now. There's so much, even here in North America, the guys who are using their hands for their profession, like in plumbing or art, something like that, they earn big bucks. My question to you guys is, do you think it's time for the Ministry of Education to identify, or well, the schools, through the Ministry of Education, of course, identify those students who don't have the propensity to go the academic route, but starting maybe from, Form 3 is what? Grade 10? I'm not sure.
Grade 9.
Grade 9? Well, as you start those grades, identify those students to go into the technical fields. Is that something you think our school should start doing? Rather than pushing us to do CXC, we don't want to do CXC. We don't want to go into that area. We want to go into another field that I feel more comfortable with. Do you think it's time that we start have that conversation?
Definitely. When I won the Canadian High Commissioner for a Day contest, one of the things that I stressed on was the importance of educating young persons, especially young women, that there are opportunities in trade that they can take advantage of. Every time we have to hire a mechanic or a plumber or a handyman to come give us a hand, we have to fork out the big bucks, and a lot of times it's more than what office workers make in a day. I know when we have to pay them for a day, it's sometimes twice what I make in a day sitting in an office. And so sometimes I think to myself, should I go into manual labor? Because this is definitely a profitable field. And for a long time, persons have looked down on these persons and looked at them as uneducated or undereducated. But I think that these skilled workers that we should push more for persons that, because not everybody's going to have not everybody has a propensity to sit in an office and sit at a computer desk all day, or not everybody's going to be a politician, everybody's not going to be a doctor, but we have to understand and recognize our strengths and weaknesses, and instead of forcing everybody into the same straitjacket, we have to begin to diversify our minds and understand that I'm not going to be a doctor, or my child is not going to be a doctor, but it's okay if he wants to be a plumber. It's okay if he wants to be a mechanic. There's nothing wrong with that. And I like your point that the Ministry of Education should consider that. Consider, because we know by looking at students, by assessing them, and especially teachers, they would understand, hey, this child is not performing well academically. Let's give him a try at manual labor. Let's see how he does. And a lot of young guys, especially, I know that they would grow up helping their father in the mechanic shop and things like that. And so they have a knack for these things. And so forcing this this specific type of education onto them, it's not going to work, and it's always going to frustrate persons.
Ms. Gopaul, do you think it's about time that, before you
Do
answer the
you mind
question,
if I?
yeah,
Do
no,
you mind
no,
if I
the same question, but I want to add something to it. Do you think, in addition to what Ms. McClure said, is that we should also have the different regions should have some vocational schools, technical schools, so the young people in the region, instead of going to Shoreville Secondary or West MR Secondary or St. Joseph High, that they can transcend from, even from primary school, go into those vocational schools to start a career in something else rather than academic?
So I have a few concerns with that. While the idea might sound appealing and I can understand where the idea stems from, the question and the biggest challenge is, how do you identify these students who do not have the propensity for higher education, such as university education? And is it because of social factors? Also there are socioeconomic factors which influence a student's ability to have that propensity for education. Sometimes they may be very limited in resources and their environmental factors, and you don't want to really box anyone in or don't give them the opportunity as time may progress. So maybe you can perhaps look at it in terms of being more equitable towards education first before you take that step, because I don't think it would be fair for other students and you just group them all together and send them to these schools when that may not really be their goal in the long term anyways. Also, there's the point of how students' career choices are formed when they're young, because often society, again, the way their upbringing is, it's a really determining factor on what career they choose to go into. And just because someone told you you should become a mechanic doesn't mean that you need to follow through with that. I think the school system gives the students a fair chance to explore all of their options, and they can make an informed decision at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, when they finish secondary schools, there are still these technical institutes, even right within their regions. Like, for example, on the West Coast, there is the Neurotechnical Institute, where students that I have known, they've done science, business, and they've decided afterwards, I don't want to do this anymore. And they went to the Technical Institute. As far as education is concerned, I don't think education ever goes to waste. Whatever you study, there's a lot of transferable skills.
As Dr. Rose mentioned, when the two young men were here, you guys are incredible in your information you're giving to us, and those are brilliant answers. I really like it. I mean, we're asking the question to feel what you have, what is your view, and I really think you guys, you're phenomenal. In terms of employment, do you think that students going to secondary schools should begin having stints at corporation during the summer break?
As in terms of a work-study
attachment? In terms of work-study, yeah.
Yes, I'm all for that. That's something I've been advocating for a really long time. I think students should be exposed to the working world perhaps after they've finished CSEC. And I even recall they were trying to ensure that all university students, also before they complete their degree or diploma, they are also exposed to some sort of work study attached with the university. And I think especially it's so crucial for secondary school students, because like I would have mentioned before, there are a lot of social determining factors regarding how students choose their career paths. And oftentimes that may not even be the career path they want to choose. So if you give them that opportunity, put them in that same working environment, they can determine at the end of that working period whether they've enjoyed it, they want to continue, and they want to further their studies within that particular field.
Ms. McClure, what do you think?
I love Ellen's response, and that question is a bit personal to me, because when I just graduated secondary school, what they would have done was they placed you in an institution based on what stream you would have been in. And so because I was in the science stream and I wanted to be a doctor, because everyone says, oh, that's where the money is, you should be a doctor, they allowed me to go do work study at a hospital. And while I spent 5 weeks at a hospital, I said, this is definitely not for me. And I decided to do a complete 180 turn, and now I'm studying international relations. I want to be a diplomat, and I'm really disappointed that COVID curtailed that opportunity for younger persons, because now they're not having that chance to go into the workplace when they're between their transition from secondary to tertiary, and to experience and get a feel of what it is that they think they want to do. And I definitely think that is something that I definitely advocate for, that we need to allow young persons the space to explore and to have a feel of what it is they think they want to do, and de-influence them from what maybe their parents or other adults might try to encourage them to do.
Excellent. In terms of, and both of you young ladies, I'm sure you came from very humble background, and you guys are, you're so eloquent in your discussion, your answers. How is poverty in your village? Is it, are the kids in your village really going through severe poverty, or is it manageable? What is going on in your villages? Ms. McClure, you can start.
Okay, sure. So my village is predominantly is housing development. So the government would have allocated land and houses to persons in this area. Now the entire area, there are many persons of diverse backgrounds and of diverse economic status in my area. So there's the front where persons might call the rich people area, and then when you travel down to the back, you see a lot of houses and a lot of structures that you can't believe that persons live here. I mean, it's not very prominent, it's not very prevalent. I mean, we still have a lot of persons that hail from my community that they're quite comfortable in their living, but of course, as with any community, there are persons that are still struggling, and there are persons that are still living in poverty around here.
Let's go, Paul. What about your area?
So when I was much younger, I used to live with my mother. This is about below 5.
And you were much
and
younger?
I was much younger. I'm still young. But before I was like about 6, between 4, 5, 6, I used to live with my mom in Iflut, and that was about a decade and a half ago, and the poverty levels were much higher then in Iflut compared to if I were to go back to Iflut now. It has definitely improved. Even with my mother used to live in a zinc house, and she worked and built, and she has a high house, like you see, like a big house. And you've seen the development throughout the years in Iflut. And to circle back to where I grew up for the rest of the period of my adolescent into adulthood, Hague, I haven't really seen that much in Hague, that much of poverty.
When you guys are too young to know Bokurs, you've heard of Bokurs, now it's Guyana's Kaisuko. But when Bokurs started their operation, or subsequently, what Bokurs did, and McConnell Brothers was also part of our sugar industry, when they set up industry, set up a factory. Okay, you live on the West Coast, Miss Gopaul, so you know Lenore Estate and Iflut Estate. And Ms. McClure, I know you wrote for Sales Estate and Wales Estate on the West Bank. What Bokurs did was, after they built a factory, or during the process of doing that, they set up housing schemes in areas near to the factory. So if you look at Leonora, there's Leonora scheme, and then there's Iflut scheme, and then there is Good Fortune, and then there is Potential scheme, and so on. They came out of that. The government today, as we speak, they're giving out thousands and thousands of house lots, which is a good thing. But where are the jobs? Where will the people who get this house lot work? And I ask that question because, like you, Ms. Gopaul, you live on the West Coast. Some people live at Tushin housing scheme, and they got to travel all the way to Georgetown to work.
Are being allocated housing schemes and house lots. Allocated house lots in these areas that might be termed far, if we're talking about proximity from the capital. But I do believe that, and what young persons are doing now is that they understand and they accept that the cost of living is raising, right? And our salaries are not raising quite as fast to cope with it. But what I see a lot of young persons doing is they're diversifying themselves. So some of them, they might recognize that they have a skill, and so they might provide that as a service to other persons, or they might recognize that they have a unique product that they have access to, and they might start selling that. And what the government does right now is that there are many small business grants that give you that push to start development or to have access to financials. And there are so many financial literacy workshops that are happening now and that are geared towards young people and helping them understand how to cope with the cost of living right now. And I mean, it is a good idea to allocate house lots around areas that have development or areas that have employment, but not everyone that's going to be allocated a house lot is going to want to go and work on the estate. Some persons, they enjoy going to the capital, or they already have a stable job, and they might not want to leave there just to live somewhere closer, just to work somewhere closer to home. Sorry. And so while it is a good model, one shoe does not fit everyone. And so it is just important that we recognize what we want to do and what direction we want our lives to take. And we just have to learn to fashion our lifestyle or to work towards that.
Ms. Gopaul?
I think firstly, we have to recognize that persons can choose where they want to be allocated their house lot in whichever region they want to. And it may be understandable that they keep choosing, like in the case of Region 3, because their families are there and they're well acquainted with the area. And Region 3 is also somewhat really developed compared to other parts. So in terms of saying that you should establish industries and sort of not have as many persons, I think, be allocated house lots there. I'm not sure how feasible or sustainable that would be. Maybe we can look at improving infrastructure to access Region 3 to the capital much better. And right now we are constructing another harbor bridge, and we could also look at establishing highways. So as far as infrastructure is concerned and linking people to travel more effectively and efficiently, we definitely need better infrastructure because, again, they do have the conscience and the ability to choose where they want to live. And oftentimes they choose these areas that are highly populated.
You guys are incredible. Dr. Rose?
Both of you have been answering these questions so eloquently. It boggles my mind. Now, my question to both of you. Are there any more Shaquan Gill, Clever Gibson, Ellen Gopaul, and Corissa McClure in Guyana? Seriously?
Yes. Yes.
Seriously?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I missed out on something. Seriously? Oh my God.
A lot of, or at least a lot of persons who I know within my social circle, they're also very eloquent and well spoken.
And I want to add here that being on the Council for the Embassy's Youth Action Network, recently we accepted applications for new members, and so we actually had 314 applicants, I believe it was, and we only had 15 spaces. And looking through some of these applications, it was a really, really tough decision because the young persons, the Youth Action Network, they accept persons from 16 to 30. And so the persons between these ages, they had some really impressive skill sets, and it was so difficult. We wish that we could take maybe 50 or 60 persons from those applicants, but we couldn't because I mean you have space constraints and budget constraints, right? But it was really surprising to see how exciting and energetic young persons are, and how progressive they are. They really want to get involved. They really want to get on the ground and do some work, get in their communities and do work. And they're so excited about that. And I'm so happy that that's the direction that we are moving in now as youth.
Guyana is in good hands. Now, Ms. McClure, you said you're studying international relations. What year are you in? I
am in my final year.
So you've gone through international relations theory and practice and everything else. Am I right?
Sure. Yeah.
If I mention a name, and he is considered by all international relations students and scholars to be the darling of international relations because he wrote a book, The Theory of International Relations. And I use that book in teaching my classes too. But I can't believe one man could write what he wrote. It's beyond me, and it's not only me. All professors I know will say the same thing. That one person is considered the darling of international relations. Do you know who he is? You don't have to. I don't know if you're open to this.
You could help me out a bit. You could help me out a bit.
Huh?
You could help me out a bit.
Have you ever heard about Kenneth Walls?
Yes, I have. We're actually using his books right now. We used his books last semester and we're using it now. I'm familiar with the book, but for the life of me, I just couldn't remember the author of that book.
He's considered a darling of it. Anybody who study international relations, if they don't know him, then they're not in that field. Because his work must come to you, no matter what happens. He redefined what international relations is in this world. Kenneth Walls. He's a good friend of mine. He's at Columbia as a, you know. Now, since you all are so brilliant in answering the questions, then it's open field. I'm going to ask you all any questions right now. I was trying to hold back because I said I don't know how much you all know and so forth. One of the questions I want to ask you all is this. Are you impressed with President Ali's policies? If so, in what areas? You, Ms. Gopaul.
Am I impressed? Yes, I am. I think I think when you look at President Irfan Ali, you always see him on the ground interacting with people. And for a lot of us young people, this is the first time we've seen, for us, this is the first time we've seen a president be on the ground and so interactive, opening and warm with the citizens and their voters. And that is something that, again, needs to be commended. And that is definitely their policy of having and programs of establishing a one Guyana. I think that's a really big one. And I think for a lot of young people, that's the one that stands out the most. Because for young people, we are not that segregated as the older generations may be. We are actually very tightly knitted. And so there isn't much segregation between young people. And I think as young people, it's really exciting for us to see not just more young people coming together, but also persons from the older generations.
In other words, you don't see race in a person, you see a person.
Yes. Yeah.
You, Ms. McClure.
One of my favorite things that have come out of this presidency or this administration is the Youth Advisory Council. And I think it is definitely a step in the right direction, because when he launched this council, and I know Ellen would have touched on it early in the program, when he launched his council, he said that he wanted to let youth understand that their voices need to be heard. And I think that youth development is something that this administration is really pushing for. We see ICT hubs being developed in all of the regions to give young persons in those regions access to the internet, access to knowledge. And I really, really appreciate the intentionality of developing youth and young persons in Guyana. I think it is something that we may have been a bit starved for, and I'm very excited to see what else he's going to implement.
Okay, very good. Now, what are some of the most pressing issues facing or affecting youth in Guyana, especially young girls, young women like yourself? You, Ms. McClure.
Okay, yeah. So I think, and this is not specific to young persons or young women, but it is definitely affecting us. And I think that there is a mental health crisis in Guyana, and we do not like to address it. We don't like to talk about it. But the reality of the situation is that many of our youth, many of our Guyanese, but more specifically our youth, we are struggling. And I mean, it was really surprising to me, because I was in a conversation the other day and I was saying something. I mentioned, oh, my therapist said this, and he said therapist. And they started laughing, and that reaction kind of gave me a shock, because when you talk to young persons, you hear, oh, I'm struggling, oh, I'm really depressed, oh, this is really affecting me, I'm really anxious, and stuff like that. I'm suicidal and stuff like that, and it's not being addressed, it's not being talked about enough. And while there have been strides in that direction, it is not that mental health is being ignored, but I think that there needs to be greater concerted efforts in that regard. And because I lived in Trinidad and Tobago, I can use this as an example. When I was living in Tobago, every secondary school had a counselor attached to it. And so when I was in grade 9, third form, I decided to go to the counselor, and from there she was able to put me on to another government counselor, and I was able to get excuse from school to go see that psychologist, because they understood the importance of mental health and mental well-being. And so I think that Guyana and the Guyanese government can take a page out of that book.
You, Ms. Gopaul.
Like Corissa would have mentioned, mental health is definitely one of the biggest areas and most challenging areas here in Guyana, especially, recently we were one of the countries in the world. We were second place in terms of the persons who have committed suicide, and I think mental health at the Mental Health and Wellbeing Conference held in 2022, it was stated that young people mental health are on the rise within young people. And Corissa would have mentioned the implementation of counselors in each school, but I also want to make mention of the fact that while I was attending secondary school, there was a program called HFLE, Health and Family Life Education. And I think that was also a right step in ensuring you provide youths with some sort of emotional support. I'm not quite sure if that subject is still being implemented in schools. I don't know if we have enough counselors to cover all of our schools, and maybe if that's why they were implementing the HFLE instead of actually incorporating those counselors into the school. So that's also something to really consider. But if it is the case that we don't really have the human resources to have counselors in every school, then the HFLE was definitely a step in the right direction towards addressing young people's mental health.
I think you all are so right on that. It's just last week I was reading a study from a group of Jamaican sociologists and psychologists, and their study concluded that, and this is what I got from the study, that 71% of the persons committing crimes in the Caribbean have a mental health problem. 71%. I hope the governments are looking at this study and try to implement policies to help these people. 71, that's extremely high.
We have actually implemented, well, we have passed a mental health bill actually last year in Parliament, and we have also seen the Ministry of Health hosting these well-being conferences to cater towards practitioners and youths, and of course persons who are being challenged and having their own difficulties and struggles. But I also have to highlight the fact that the University of Guyana actually does have a counseling unit where it's free of cost to all university students to counsel. So if you're looking at this and you are a university student, it's highly advisable that you utilize those services because they are free of cost. You don't need to pay money to go see a therapist if one of your factors that may deter you from accessing these services is finances. But yes, the university is there providing these services to students.
Some in Guyana say, and this has been recent here, but it's been pushed a long time ago, that the late Dr. Chedi Barrett Jagan should be the father of Guyana. Others are saying that Forrest Burnham should be the father of Guyana. What do you think, Ms. Gopaul?
Why can't they both be? Why can't they both? They both played such an instrumental part. Why can't we have them as the fathers of Guyana? Why must we only have one of them? Why can we not appreciate what they both have done for Guyana in its early stages and political development? Regardless of your political affiliation, you with a conscious mind and being a rational person, although you would not have agreed with everything and each one of their policies, they have contributed in some way towards Guyana's development.
You, Ms. McClure.
I completely agree with Ellen. I mean, they both had policies that moved Guyana forward in some way or the other, somewhere or the other. And there is no reason for us to segregate or for us to divide them based on which party they may have belonged to. It is very important that we recognize and appreciate the importance of their contribution to Guyana, and we do not undermine either of them.
Here is what I'm going to tell the government, and I hope that they don't hate me for this. Fathers of a country is a 19th century terminology. People don't use it anymore. They use heroes. So you can have 1, 2, 3, 10 heroes. The father concept is outdated, my friends. Don't use the father of a country. It was going back to Napoleon's time and before. So it is not working today. Nobody's the father of any country, but you can have heroes of countries. So I hope the government is listening and they build some palace in Guyana and put all the heroes there. You could have political heroes. You could have sport heroes. You could have all sorts of different heroes there, so forth. Now, my next question to you. You all know domestic violence is very prevalent in Guyana. What do you think the government should do to lessen it or actually end it? You, Ms. Gopaul.
I think it's key and it should be an imperative that we do have legislation in place. I know this for a fact. We have legislation in place, but it's a matter of enforcing that legislation and having regulatory bodies. I can recall when I was about 14, my neighbor, her husband came running up to her door with a cutlass, yeah? And this is about very late in the evening, about 11 p.m. And she was screaming from her veranda over to our yard, sir, sir. She was calling for my dad, and because obviously it's a very touchy situation, and he called the police. I think he called the police, and I did not see the police show up in a speedy manner at that point in time back then. And to me, that's unacceptable, because even after the guy left, and I think she also had a restraining order on him, her son kept peeping out his head from the door, and she had to keep urging him to come back inside, come back inside. And I was also concerned for his safety as much as her safety, because, him being her son, although he's still relatively young, he still feels the need to protect his mother. And for me, that was a little heartbreaking to see, and I would have liked to see a much more speedy response to the situation. I think if you report, or if you call and you report a case of that nature, it deserves to be responded at the utmost urgency.
Ms. McClure?
Yeah, so let me begin by first appreciating what the government is doing for victims of IPV, intimate partner violence, and domestic violence. And as I said earlier, I'm kind of biased to the Ministry of Human Services, but that is the ministry that predominantly deals with that. They have a lawyer that is on hand to assist for free, a pro bono lawyer that is on hand to assist any woman or any person rather that reports incidents of domestic violence and chooses to take that matter to court. There is also a toll-free 24/7 hotline, 914, that persons can call if they are a victim or if they witness a domestic violence happening. But aside from that, while we do have these mechanisms in place to support these victims, I think that it is also important that the consequences are enforced. If you have ever reported any instance of domestic violence or IPV or sexual violence, you would understand that the process is very slow and it's draining. So, for example, if you report it today and they arrest them the same day, which is highly unlikely, but if they do, the police is only legally allowed to hold that perpetrator for 72 hours, or the alleged perpetrator for 72 hours. And then when that 72-hour hold is up, they're released on bail. And they have the prerogative to do whatever they want. They can come back to look for you. And I think that is the major thing that we need to champion reform for in Guyana. There needs to be some sort of mechanism in place. Maybe we could have a special haven. And I know that this has begun to be implemented, or havens for persons that report these crimes. And then we also need to see a speeding up of the process of justice for these victims.
Very well. In Guyana, as you all know, persons who were allegedly commit a crime are placed on remands sometimes for 5 years. Just last month, a guy was in remand for 10 years, and then they realized he did not commit a crime, so they released him. Do you think the justice system should be overhauled to prevent people from being on remand for so long? And when they're tried, if they're found not guilty, they have no recourse to gain no money from the government. What do you think the justice system should happen to the justice system? Ms. Gopaul?
I think there's a backlog right now in our court systems as it relates to cases. And I'm a pre-law student, but I'm not a law student as yet. And that's not quite my area of specialty as yet. So you know what? The next few years from now, I will be better equipped to answer that question for sure.
You want to give it a shot, Ms. McClure?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, in Guyana, there is, as Ellen said, there is a backlog currently within the justice system, and that is why sometimes persons are on remand for 10 years before they actually get a trial and they actually get their case heard. I mean, I know some persons that have reported domestic violence or sexual violence, and they're waiting for their trial for 3, 4 years. Sometimes we see stories coming out of persons that committed a crime in 2012, and then they're now being charged after being on remand for so long. And I think that the only thing that we can do is push for more magistrates, more courts. I mean, there has to be an ease or there has to be an even dispersion of these cases across a larger body of persons, because what happens is when you have this limitation or these limited persons dealing with these issues, is that they become overworked and overburdened, and you you can only possibly get through so many court cases in a day, because sometimes you're on trial, it takes 2 days, 3 days, 3 weeks. So I think that as we continue to generate more revenue, that is something that we could begin to look at. And additionally, there has to be some sort of what am I trying? There has to be some sort of benefit for persons, or reparations to persons that have spent so much time on remand, and they're proven innocent. In the US, I know that I had read an article that this guy, he was on remand for so long, and when he was proven innocent, the government had to pay him a sum of money. And I think that if we begin to implement that in Guyana, it causes greater accountability and a greater urgency within our justice system, because the government doesn't just want to be dishing out money all willy-nilly. So it promotes an urgency within the justice system to ensure that cases are solved and the cases are moved through as quickly as possible.
In the United States, almost 5,000 people who have been imprisoned have been exonerated because they realize now with DNA they have not done the crime, but the cities have to compensate them. Let me give you all a scenario here. There's been an accident in Guyana a few weeks ago, and 2 cars, and the matter reached in front of a magistrate. I'm not going to call her name. And one of the drivers pointing out to the magistrate said, "Look, Your Honor, this person don't have a driver's license. This person don't have insurance." You know what the magistrate told the person? She's not concerned with that. If you don't have insurance or you don't have a driver's license, automatically you're wrong. You're not supposed to be on the road, period. But she said she's not concerned, that she got to look who is wrong and who is right. Now, if that is a magistrate, then something is wrong with the country. Anyway, I just say that to tell you, to show you all that how people are taking the laws or acting on their own behalf to do whatever they feel like. Because a person like that is a magistrate, that man should be brought to the magistrate and get rid of such a magistrate. My next question to the two of you: cost of living, we know, is high throughout the world, but it's high in Guyana as well. How is it affecting youths? Ms. McClure.
Yeah, so as young persons, we let me start by saying we can only have so much experience and so much education as we move through our life's journey. And so for young persons that are aiming to be independent, they might be able to move out and live on their own. Maybe they want to live closer to Georgetown than their family lives, but that's much more difficult for them now, given the I want to say wage crisis. And I know I'm not refuting the fact that everywhere in the world there are persons that are working for minimum wage. Everyone can't work for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I understand that, but at the same time, it is really difficult. And young persons, when you talk to them and when you talk within your social circles, they express how difficult it is to save. They express how difficult it is to maybe do something nice for yourself once in a while, because all your money is going into just trying to barely survive. For example, the average salary of a young person is between $60,000 to $80,000 in Guyana right now. Maybe we could stretch it to 100 if we're being ambitious. And that is not enough. When you look at rent prices now, the cost for a 1-bedroom, and sometimes you're seeing it in USD, the price for a furnished 1-bedroom is $1,000 US, $2,000 US, $1,500 US, and it's really ridiculous, because and it's also really frustrating, because young persons, you want to move out, you want to be independent, you want to experience life. But it's so difficult to do that because of the wages that you're making and the salary that you're carrying home at the end of the month.
So you got to stay home with mama.
Definitely, you have to stay home. Just maybe until you're able to secure that high paying job and you could finally afford to be in your own space. But a lot of young persons, they're living at home because not because they want to, but because they just simply cannot afford to do anything else.
There's something called rooming. 6 of you can rent a house and room inside.
That is true, but that's definitely not the most comfortable situation, and I don't think anyone is gonna do that by choice. Only if they're forced to do that, and I think that shouldn't be the case.
So you rule out rooming.
I don't think I would room. I rather stay at home. I rather stay at home than room.
You, Miss Gopaul.
I think like Carissa said, young people are choosing the most economical option for them right now, which is to live with their parents. And for the ones who are not, they usually room, like you said. I don't know if they're rooming with 9 persons, but they're definitely rooming. And being that young people are now entering into the labor force and they're now finishing off their degrees, they're at the lower end of the salary scale. They're not earning as much as others, like the older persons who are well established within their careers, and now they're left to figure out. And also, they don't as well have excellent financial management skills. So you can couple that with being inexperienced, now entering the labor force, not knowing how to manage their money properly, yeah, and also having to face inflation. And now they have so many odds against them where their finances are concerned. So as it is right now, the most and the best thing you can do for young people is to teach them how to manage their finances properly until they finish their degree or earn a higher earning salary, or until the economic situation, because inflation right now is skyrocketing all over the world. So right now, I think the best bet young people can take is to manage their finances properly.
In Canada, when you reach 18, you have to leave your parents' house and go on your own.
That model definitely.
Are you sure?
In Guyana.
Yeah.
We would see a lot of homeless. We would see a lot of homeless young
But my next question to you is this. Which continent you think young youths leave their home at an early age the most?
I would say North America.
You, Miss Gopaul.
Either North America, Europe.
It is Europe.
Yeah.
In France, as soon as you reach 17, 18, bye-bye mommy, bye-bye daddy, I'm gone. It's happening. In Germany, it's the same thing. In Italy, it's the same thing. All those countries, they're gone. Charles, over to you.
Ladies, you're getting some really great online audience. Love you guys. Chan Prasad said that you guys are very smart. They're proud of you. Ms. Lautan says, young woman, you're extremely eloquent and she wish you all the best. Mr. Ali says that he was in this program for a long time and this is the best program he has seen so far. And you guys are incredible. You should have people like you on this program. Well, what I want to talk about is...
No, they said Ali is President Ali.
Well, no, it's Imran Ali. I don't know if it's President Ali using that name. Maybe he is. Young lady pregnancy. There seems to be a problem in Guyana. Why do you think our young women are going that route? Ms. McClure?
That is an interesting statement you made at the end. You said, why do you think our young women are going that route? Is it that they're choosing to go that route? Is it that they're intentionally becoming pregnant teenagers? Or is it that they're not adequately educated and they don't have adequate opportunities to prevent that? I know Guyana has a premier NGO right now, the Guyana Responsible Parenting Association. And what they do is they provide family planning, they provide contraception, they provide education to young persons of any age, and you can go in there and you can get help, you can get assistance. And I think that more organizations like that need to be championed and need to be pushed in Guyana to let young ladies know that here there's options. I mean, if we preach abstinence, that is. We know that preaching abstinence is not the most effective way to prevent teenage pregnancy. In fact, in states and in countries where they preach abstinence, those are states, like for example in Texas in the US or in the southern US, those are states that have the highest instances of teenage pregnancy. So I think it is imperative that instead of preaching abstinence and telling young ladies, hey, don't do this, because they're still gonna be curious, they're still gonna explore. You tell them, hey, if you're doing this, this is how to stay safe. This is how to prevent pregnancy. And here's the direction your life is probably gonna go to if you are to get pregnant at a young age. And it's not about bashing the mothers who are already pregnant or bashing teenage mothers who are trying their best, but it's just to help young women understand that there are other avenues and that there are ways to prevent this from happening if it is not the direction that you want your life to go in right now.
Ms. Gopaul?
I think young women and women should have an improved access to reproductive health care. And I know for some persons, they might be thinking, oh, well, if you give them condoms or you give them these access to these healthcare, then you are, especially persons who are more morally inclined and religiously inclined, they may think that you are encouraging them in this sort of conduct. But regardless of your religious belief and your faith, I think it is still important to provide access to these reproductive health care to women and girls, especially in the context of teenage pregnancy in girls. And we also have to develop ways into which we can reintegrate these girls more effectively. Let's say, for instance, they become pregnant while in school and they drop out of school due to their pregnancy and they now have a baby. Maybe we should have programs in schools geared towards these young women where we follow up with them and ensure that they come back to school, they finish off their education, or they even apply for a gold scholarship to finish off their education if it is the case that they can't do CSEC. I know they have there is another qualification. I can't remember it off of my head right now, but there are programs in place. So it's just a matter of getting these resources to these girls.
And
Suicide? Yeah, go on. Sorry, yes, McClure.
Before we come off that point, as we're talking, I remember what some volunteer organizations do, especially in the US, I've seen it, is they go out into the streets and they give homeless persons needles for when they're taking their heroin. And a lot of persons criticize it. They say, what are you doing? You're encouraging these persons, these addicts to use. And they're saying, no, they're going to use regardless. If it is that they're going to go to the streets and pick up a random needle that they find on the road, they are still going to do it. But it is just about ensuring that they are safe in doing it, or they do it in the safest possible way. While we're in no way encouraging it, we have to understand that persons are going to do what they want until they get that help that they need. And so we have to just ensure that the best practices are employed.
You know, I'm glad that you guys give that answer. I was going to suicide. Before I go there, I used to work at Demerara Distillers Limited, and the chairman right now is Gopaul Samaru. And at one of our meetings, you know what he mentioned? He said, if a concrete wall is cracked, we can do two things. One, we can take sand and cement and paste it up nicely and it look beautiful, but the wall is still cracked. Or we can dig the foundation up, correct the foundation, and then your wall will stand up for 100 years. I'm saying that to ask you two ladies this question. Has our society deteriorated so much that we have all these mental issues, we have suicidal, especially young people, we have teenage pregnancy? Why do you, as two young people, two of our outstanding young people, why is this happening in our society in your view? Ms. McClure, you can start. Okay, go on, Ms. Gopaul, go on.
Whether it's a matter of whether our society has degenerated, you see, that's up for debate, because the reason why we have so much of access to this information and knowing the statistics of how many women and girls are being pregnant and how many persons are engaging in illegal activities and having this overwhelming amount of information as to what is occurring is really because of technology. And what is it to say that back then that was also happening, but there wasn't really technology to expose these things?
Excellent. Ms. McClure, what do you think?
So you mentioned the point of mental health, right? And mental health going downhill right now, and the society deteriorating or degenerating. And I want to stress that I don't like the word deteriorating or degenerating, but as Ellen said, these issues are now coming to light more. And now that they're in the spotlight, we can say, hey, this is something that we need to deal with. And I think that just as we are giving scholarships to persons to go and study petroleum engineering in China, and we're giving all these scholarships to enhance the the oil industry, we need to focus more on we need to focus as well, not more, on the issues that still need our attention. So, for example, there's a lack of trained psychologists or counseling psychologists or clinical psychologists in Guyana. We know this. We know that persons with a bachelor's degree in psychology are not equipped to offer mental health services. But yeah, because there are a shortage of qualified psychologists in Guyana, these are the persons that we have to give our mental health. They have our mental health in their hands, and they are not 100% equipped and qualified to do so. And so I think just as we're offering scholarships in those areas, we also need to look at scholarships in psychology, in counseling psychology, master's degrees, that is, so that we can rest assured that when you go to get help, whether you go to get counseling or therapy, you are in good hands.
Ms. McClure, how many young people in your neighborhood are in drugs or they're, as we say, they're going the wrong way?
My neighborhood, I'm not gonna say it's big for a drug trade. Of course, as in every neighborhood, you pass in the corner and you see young persons there. They might be smoking marijuana and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say that it's a hot spot or a hub for drug use.
Ms. Gopaul, in your area, do you know any friends, family who's going that route?
I'm not aware of friends or family going that route, no, but I have seen instances where maybe one or two persons that is within the village of Hague have been incarcerated for being engaged in those activities, but it is not on such a wide scale, no.
Now, we have two big political parties, and as you know, the PP and the PNC, and they have youth arms, which I think they're also very powerful. Do you think it's about time that Guyana have an independent youth arm, that is people who don't want to be part of any political movement, but just for social issues? Do you think it's about time that you two young people and the two you had before start thinking of setting up a youth movement across Guyana for independent mind youths like you, who will not necessarily take a political stand, but will want to work with their fellow young people for the betterment of all? Ms. Gopaul?
Is this a youth organization that is governing? Is it like a central body, or is it just like another non-governmental organization?
Well, there must be a core. There must be a core body that will coordinate, and then there will be groups all across the country. Whether it's if every village have one or two groups or whatever. Is that something you guys want to take on the challenge? If you do, I want to promise you this: I will contribute $100 a month US towards that project.
I think it is important to establish the framework and the mechanisms by which you can have all youth organizations within the country gather together, share ideas, give inputs, and collaborate. So yes, that is something I think youth should be looking into. Whether these mechanisms already exist and they aren't functioning as they are, well, that's up for debate. But definitely you should have a more concrete structure in place to support these youths.
So as a budding attorney, are you prepared to take on the challenge?
Why not?
Ms. McClure?
As
one of our next diplomat, are you prepared to start that process?
I totally agree with Ellen in that we have these youth organizations in Guyana full of energetic young persons, and it's more about building cohesion and togetherness and saying, hey, can we come together and go into the communities, which a lot of them are doing, but can we make a greater concerted effort and go into the community and root for change and root for mentorship programs? Can we root for and it is very important also. I mean, while we have these big plans and these big goals and we're saying, yes, this is a grand idea, this is great, it is still important that you consider the feasibility and sustainability of it. Because one of your concerns, especially as a young volunteer going into communities, is the lack of receptivity of these persons in these communities. Sometimes they don't want to hear what you have to say. Sometimes they're set in their ways they're comfortable, and they see no reason to move from where they are. And so I think that also deters a lot of young persons from going into these communities, because you're not going to be accepted with open arms. And so while this is a great idea, it is also important to consider that as a factor.
We're saying Guyana, Ms. McClure, one dirty build dam, right? So it takes time to build. There will be rejection, of course, but there will also be a lot of young people who will We're very receptive to it. And maybe one way for both of you to start is the President's Youth Council. Are you two ladies part of that Youth Council?
No.
No.
So that's a way to, I guess my recommendation would be to be part of that council. And with the president being the head of it, of course, state funds will be allocated to it. So you have funding as well. And you guys will go on. You will, as Dr. Rose said, you will be our heroes in the future, taking care of, coordinating the activities of our youths to ensure that our youths, because our youths, I think in my view, and you correct me, ladies, if you think I'm wrong, is that they lost hope sometime. And because they lose hope, they don't think they have a future, they think they're a failure and so on. They go into drugs or they go into crime and so on. So if we can focus their energy into productive use, I think that will do well for themselves and of course, for our country. We are running out of time. So in closing, you guys want to say that and anything in closing?
I think, yes, some youths are becoming frustrated, but for a majority of the youths, I have to tell you that they are resilient and they are committed to finding causes, avenues, and ways they can better their lives. And they aren't just depending solely on the government. They're exploring other opportunities and ways in which they can succeed, whether that it's through entrepreneurship. Of course, the government cannot solve all of your problems, and youths are really resilient. So yes, while there may be some amount of youths engaging in delinquent activities due to unemployment and just becoming frustrated in general, I have to say a majority of the youths, they really have shown resilience.
Ms. McClure?
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Sugrim and Dr. Rose, for allowing us the opportunity to be on this program tonight. And I hope that policymakers and persons in the decision-making spheres are watching, and they can see that our young persons, we are capable, we're energetic, and we're excited, and we have opinions and we have ideas that can be implemented in Guyana's policies. And so it is important that we continue to have this voice and these opportunities to express our concerns and to voice our opinions to ensure holistic development within Guyana.
And I want to challenge, but you see Ms. Gopaul lives next to the president, right? He's from Lenora, so she's next door to him, and you're not far away. Get on the President Council and start that process.
But I think we don't even need to be on the President's Council to start that process. The Council can even start that process themselves. I think that's a wonderful opportunity for them to further the agenda of a One Guyana by going into marginalized communities and communities that are hard to reach. And I'm sure with, of course, a political support and that sort of mechanism, it would be much easier for them to infiltrate. Well, I wouldn't say infiltrate because that sounds like a bad word, but much easier for them to access these youths and provide them with resources and help them to foster this One Guyana that we talk about day in, day out, night and day. So yes, we don't need to be on that council for that to start. That can just be up and running.
Dr. Rose, closing.
Yeah, I have something here to say that corruption, no matter how you talk about it, there are ways people are finding to become corrupt. And I'm going to mention this. There's a gentleman at Skellen the Quarantine works for GPL. He's a supervisor there. And information I got, and it's accurate because people said it, because I have friends on the ground, that he's taking bribe left, right, and center to give people current. The other day I was told a single mother with 3 children had to fork out thousands of dollars to give to him to get power. The managers of GPL are all in Georgetown, and they think these people are doing a good job out there, but they're not checking to know what's going on. They're not going on the ground to hear what people are saying about these workers in these various regions. And this is where organizations are failing people. They put someone out there in their lying areas to do the work. They don't go on the ground to find it from people. How are you being treated? What is taking place? And so forth. They don't do that in Guyana. But this guy, and it was sickening to know that a single mother of 3 had to give him almost a month's salary to get power. He's a supervisor up there. So I will end with that. It is very, very sickening to know these things. And no one seems to be understanding or caring, because you don't put John Jones out there and leave him there. Go onto the people that he's serving to find it from the people, how the services, how if it's good, how they're getting by and so forth. No one does that. All GPL managers are in Georgetown. Very, very sad.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rose. To you, Miss Ellen Gopaul and Miss Corissa McClure, we want to thank you so much. You have been very eloquent. Our congregation, our viewers love you two guys. And we want to wish you all the best. And please be a mentor to your friends and your colleagues around. We want to wish you, Ms. Gopaul, all the best in your studies to be an outstanding attorney. And to you, Ms. McClure, you will be an outstanding diplomat to make our country proud and our flag flying high. So thank you so much for being with us. We want to thank our audience. We want to thank Nohar Singh and Ryan Gobin. And to all of you, again, to our Muslim community, we want to wish all of you Eid Mubarak greetings, and we trust that you will have a wonderful Eid. Until next time, God bless our great country of Guyana. Thank you so much.